Good evening and welcome. You are watching the big story on NDTV Profit and I'm Nupur Talwar Suri. Well, India is currently engaged in a significant debate over the allocation of satellite spectrum, a crucial resource for enhancing communication and connectivity. On one side, Elon Musk's Starlink is advocating for the administrative allotment of satellite spectrum. On the other hand, we have big Indian telecos like Jio, which are pushing for the auction method. What is the satellite spectrum debate? Who is supporting the administrative allocation? What does the Telecommunication Act suggest? That is the big story for today. Let's go across to Rishabh Bhatnagar, who has more details and is now joining us.
We saw Jio actually write to the telecom regulator in India, which is TRAI, and they had demanded that there should be a level playing field for telecom operators as well as satellite internet providers. This is the crux of the issue that happened. And why we're talking about this today is that we saw at IMC yesterday, on day one of the Indian Mobile Congress is when this entire debate was reignited. Now it's basically India's major private telcos versus the large internet providers of the world that use satellites, such as Elon Musk, Starlink, as well as other members of the BIF. Which is the Broadband Association, the Global Broadband Association, which also includes Amazon's Project Kuiper. At the heart of it is that there is no level playing field, that if satellite internet providers want to enter urban areas where private and retail customers exist, people with a much more paying potential exist, they should come in with licenses and not purely because the government has allocated them some share of the spectrum. This is the demand of the private telcos. But why this is a bit of an issue is because global standards dictate that satellite spectrum should be administratively allocated and not auctioned off. So the demand of these telcos is going against what is actually stated in the Telecom Act, as well as what the global ITU standards dictate.
Give us a bit of a background also on Elon Musk. Now, he tweeted earlier, and that is one of the facets that has actually set off this huge debate in this space. So tell us more about that.
Right. So Elon Musk operates one of the largest satellite internet providers, as I said, Starlink, which is present in many, many countries, but India is not one currently. They are eyeing an entry. And their entry was supposed to be through this administrative allocation that the government is supposed to hand. And this is how they plan to enter a large market like India. So Elon Musk's reaction coming in yesterday, and he termed the telcos' demand as unprecedented, because it truly is, because ITU, which is the global authority, which is the global regulator for this, has very clearly stated that that satellite spectrum is shared spectrum, so it cannot be auctioned off. And it has said, and the government has also come in yesterday. Jyotiraditya Scindia, the Minister of Communications, also indicated that auctions seem tough, given that existing laws and regulations already point in favor of administrative allocation. So Elon Musk's entry was unprecedented, but his reaction too stated that this demand by telcos is also unprecedented.
All right. Rishabh, thank you very much for joining us and taking us through what's happening in this space. Now, this, of course, does bring us to the three big questions that we're asking today. The topmost, of course, is why are big Indian telecos pushing for satellite spectrum auction? The second one that we'll be examining through the duration of this show is why is the government in favor of administrative allocation of satellite spectrum, and is this the beginning of a new telecom war? And to discuss this further, we are now joined by Mr. Mahesh Uppal. He's a telecom expert, and also Dr. Satyan N. Gupta. He's the ex-principal advisor at TRAI, of course. Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good evening, Nupur.
Well, Dr. Gupta, to you first. What do you make of this standoff of sorts that we are seeing between the government and some telecom companies, particularly, of course, Jio, which has, in fact, asked for intervention from the government on this?
Yeah, thank you, Nupur. Actually, this standoff, actually, as you know, Indian telecom sector is not actually devoid of any standoff. Actually, whatever government or regulator does normally is results into some standoff or some legal issues, actually. So it is not new for the Indian government as well as Indian regulator. Now, this particular standoff, and actually you have already pointed out, in fact, Rishabh have clarified most of your questions already, in fact, and your three questions. First, why someone is creating this standoff we as an exception, and that is what, because the law of the land is any actually scarce resource normally should be sold through a auction if you want to monetize it or if you want to get maximum pricing. So that is what was the convention always, though this particular actually domain, and that is the spectrum for satellite, is different. So because of that, someone, because in a auction, the winner, there is always a winner actually, but sometimes the winner curse is also there, but in this case there is always a winner. If someone who really want to become a winner, that means a beneficiary, so he will always like to have a auction, because that is what is the conventional way of allocating any scarce resource, and spectrum is always treated as a scarce resource. But then these standoff like this, actually, what is the government stand? Actually, here mainly it is not the beginning of any great telecom war, which have been there, though standoff is there. But why actually the government? What is the role of government here? Because when there is a standoff, normally government should take help of the regulator, or they should decide themselves. So as have been told by Rishabh also, and with the international best practices conventions, the spectrum for the satellite actually is always shared. It is never allocated through a auction, because allocating through a auction means that you are getting it, giving it for a single owner who will use, so single user, so it will not be shared. And if it is not shared, a scarce resource, if it is not shared, so that will result into what we call a underutilization. First it is a scarce resource, then by giving it on auction on a dedicated ownership kind of thing or dedicated usage right, you are preventing it sharing, and hence you are making it underutilized, and that will actually be against the public policy as well as the public good principles. So that is where, so as have been told already, all over the world, for spectrum for satellite is always issued on a administrative basis, and for that also there are way, and if there are more than one user, so you also have to basically allocate them at a price which is best under the circumstances. And for that, regulator is there already. Minister himself has mentioned that it is with the regulator. Now they have made a reference to the regulator. Please let us know what should be the base price, what they call, or a floor price for awarding it actually administratively to those who want to
All
use
right.
it on a shared basis.
All right. So, in fact, I'm going to come to you, Mr. Uppal, in just a bit. Let's first play out what the Telecom Minister Jyotiraditya Scindia said about Satcom spectrum. He expressed that it would be allocated administratively as per the Telecommunications Act of 2023.
The Telecom Act of 2023, which was passed in December of last year, has very clearly put this in Schedule 1, which means that for Satcom, spectrum will be allocated administratively. Now, that does not mean that spectrum does not come without a cost. What that cost is and what the formula of that costing is going to be will not be decided by you or me, it will be decided by TRAI. And there is a paper that has already been circulated by TRAI, and we have a regulatory authority for telecom, and that regulatory authority of telecom has been empowered by the Constitution to decide what that administrative pricing is going to be. And I'm very confident that they will come up with the best pricing that should be adopted, provided that it's being given on an administrative manner.
All right, Mr. Uppal, you just heard the minister over there now. He says that SATCOM essentially falls into a different basket. And all over the world, this is the norm that is adopted. What, according to you, then, are, the issues that Jio, for instance, seems to have with this procedure?
Yes, I think this is a last-ditch battle, as the minister clearly mentioned. The Telecom Act said very clearly that the spectrum for satellite satellite communications would not be auctioned, but allocated administratively. The real fear that companies like Jio and other terrestrial telecom companies, mobile companies such as Airtel, Jio, Vodafone, etc., seem to have is that this will bring in additional competition, which clearly they don't welcome. And I think, given the nature of competitive markets, they would like the price for new entrants to be higher than the administrative allocation of spectrum might cause to be. So basically, this is another attempt to influence the regulators as well as the government to see if the price of entry, in other words, the administratively determined price for spectrum, could be higher rather than lower. Because the incumbent companies, the mobile players currently, feel threatened. I do believe that threat is unreal. That threat is not imminent. This is a very tactical move. And as your predecessor, your correspondent, as Dr. Gupta has also mentioned, this is something that would go against the grain of international regulation. Spectrum for satellites is never optioned for the simple reason that users don't need it exclusively. It's not as if, unlike mobile telecom, where, for example, Airtel or Jio, etc., need whatever spectrum is allocated to them exclusively, and therefore auctions make sense. Here, that is not the case. You do not need satellite spectrum for exclusive use, and therefore it makes eminent sense, as indeed is the practice worldwide, to allocate the spectrum administratively.
Right, Dr. Gupta, one of the points that have been made by Jio, for instance, is that they believe that actually giving out spectrum in an administrative manner is essentially going to not give them a level playing field. I beg your pardon. Is that an argument that even stands at this point in time?
No, Nupur, actually, there is no argument for the level playing field here because the field itself are different. Actually, the telco spectrum is terrestrial. So that is a ground field. And whereas this spectrum is in the sky, actually, in the open sky. So actually for the literal meaning of the level playing field itself, this argument fails because they are not the same field. Level playing field means using same rules for same field, actually. That is the level playing field. But if field itself is different, actually, literally, then the argument does not stand here. And otherwise also, the government is not giving this administratively allocated spectrum free of cost. In the auction also, actually, there is a concept of base price or floor price. Here also, TRAI actually will be costing it equivalent to what is the base price for a auction. So most of the cases, the auction is won at the base price. So the same pricing, though it will not be auctioned per se, but the pricing will almost be same as the floor price determined by the TRAI, because TRAI uses the same formula, in fact, for costing the spectrum. And whatever is the cost of allocating the spectrum at administrative way, that is the cost normally taken as the base price of auction. That is what is normally is the closing price of the auction also. So that means there is no differentiation at the base price level. And main thing is the utilization. Actually, it will be more utilized, and the competition issue also is not there, because the total cost of providing a service using the satellite spectrum, satellite equipment, and satellite handset is much more than doing it terrestrially or conventionally. So you don't have to worry about the additional competition, because their cost will be much more than what you have. Actually, they will only be able to sell their services where you have not reached or where you are not providing the service. They can never compete with your existing service, with your existing customer. That is what, because it is a very expensive way of delivering a service. So it will be delivered only where you as a conventional or a terrestrial operator have not delivered.
Right now, Mr. Uppal, at the heart of it is also going to be the administrative pricing. Now, what is the formula likely to be for that? Because, that is something that could change the dynamics.
Yes, I think it's very too premature to talk about the formula, but I think the basic principles, as Dr. Gupta has mentioned, are well known. And I think the TRA has been doing that. I don't believe that this base price would be comparable or should be comparable to the ones for terrestrial spectrum, because the logic of it is different, the amount needed is different, the locations at which it is needed is different. So several other parameters will apply. But the main point is that, as Dr. Gupta has also mentioned, this is not the same market. The satellite communications market is a very different market across the world. I don't think for every one satellite players, there are less than 100 mobile users. One satellite user, there is more than 100 terrestrial users. This market is a niche market. Can play in situations where terrestrial services cannot be delivered conveniently or cheaply, and so on, and in a timely fashion. So I don't think the base price would be comparable, nor would the markets be comparable for a considerable period of time. I think it is simply what the telcos are currently doing is to try and to prevent potential competition down the line, maybe for 10, 15, 20 years from now, but not in the immediate.
And how do you see this sector now opening up? We do have OneWeb and Jio SES, which have got licenses so far for satellite communications in the country. There is, of course, Elon Musk-led Starlink, and Amazon has also applied for a license, which is, of course, yet to be approved by the government. But do you see the space changing considerably?
Not considerably if you look at it from the point of view of who will have a significant market share when it comes to revenues, because the large proportion of revenues in the telecom sector comes from mobile services, terrestrial mobile services, the likes of which you and I use. So, but yes, some niche areas will open up, like satellite communications, like the IoT or the Internet of Things, etc. So there are new markets opening and with considerable revenues at stake. So yes, we'll see more action, more new markets coming, more new players. But for the foreseeable future, you will see mobile operators having the larger proportion of revenues and dominating the market, as they do internationally.
All right, so it's going to get more interesting, perhaps. Let me get in Dr. Gupta. Now, Dr. Gupta, What is the formula of administrative pricing that the government is likely to arrive at? Now, TRAI, of course, is essentially the regulator which will be looking at that. What is your sense of how it will work?
Actually, Nupur, it is the tri-domain only, not the government, even
Yes.
formula, looking at formula and all. And there is a set formula for administrative pricing of spectrum. Always, they call it MCK actually. So we will not go in much detail, but there is a empirical formula. They have been using it day and night actually. Now the auction have started. In fact, they use a similar formula, though there will be different parameters when you do it for a base price of a auction, but there are some formula, like it depends on the usage, coverage, the capacity, and latency. Means so many parameters are there, so everything is taken and there are set formulas for that. So that is what TRAI will try to use actually, and they have a final say. That is one good thing actually. So they do it transparently actually. They have already issued a consultation paper. So there is actually, everyone will have a role to play, every stakeholder. And so it cannot be just a, you can say, closed door determination or just a benchmarked approach used actually. So we don't have to worry about that, anybody, that whether it is underpriced, overpriced, or it is done in a non-transparent manner. The formulas are already there, tested, used, and they have stood the scrutiny of the stakeholders already.
Dr. Gupta, what's your sense of how do you see this space now changing? Because we will also have big international players now coming into this.
Yes, actually, space will change, but as I told Nupur, the space will change just to cover, like Dr. Upal mentioned, niche areas, niche market, and that niche market is already there. Yesterday, also, even Prime Minister mentioned, Honorable Minister also mentioned, 5% of the country actually is not covered by terrestrial mobile network. And if you count the number of villages, it comes to about 50,000 villages where it is technically non-feasible to set up a tower because of either backhaul issue or some line of sight issues. So that is where the market is already there, which is a niche market. It will get divided by these four players, as two you have mentioned, the GOSCS and OneWeb, and the new international players who have also applied, shown their interest. So actually they will add a lot of value. They will complement instead of what we call compete actually. That is the main message here. They will complement whatever you could not do with the conventional technology, with the terrestrial technology. So we are doing it, and we are not all from abroad. Some of we are like you actually, or some of you actually. So what is the issue actually? That what is the war about? What is the discussion about actually? They are helping where you could not do actually. So I think we don't have to worry about anything on any distortion in the market, any over competition in the market. Actually, it will be complementation.
All right. Mr. Upal, any final thoughts on this? There were some suggestions that urban areas and rural areas be put into different baskets. There was some suggestions like that. For areas, which are not currently served, there should be a different allocation. How do you see that? And any final thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think we have to step back and recognize one thing, that India is a major player in space communications, and yet it is one of the weakest or the poorest players when it comes to using satellite communications. And satellite communications, as has been pointed out, has a major role to play, especially in areas which can currently not be covered. And there are populations and regions which are currently not able to access either communications or internet. So I think it is important that the government recognizes the need to incentivize this area, to remove barriers, so that we have a multiplicity not just of players in the market, but multiplicity of technologies in the market. Because really, a good competitive market requires not only more players, but also choice of technologies for users, choice of business models, and so on and so forth. And I think currently that is the weakness of our market, that it is very, despite being very vibrant and very has led to lower costs and huge coverage, it still is a market with few players and a limited set of technologies. We have virtually no fixed line network comparable to the mobile one. We have none of satellite communications and so many other things. And I think both the government as well as the regulator needs to fill this gap as soon as possible. And we do need a much richer kind of competition in the telecom sector than we have currently. And we have a lot to be proud of, but a lot that we can improve by incorporating new players, new technologies, etc.
All right. So, Mr. Mahesh Uppal and Dr. Gupta, both of you seem to suggest that healthy competition may be the way forward for SATCOMs, and also that private players perhaps are getting jittery for no reason at all. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us on The Big Story this evening. Well, with that, it is a wrap on The Big Story on NDTV Profit. Thank you very much for joining in, and news and updates continue. So do stay with us.